You're listening to the Greening Out podcast. This show contains profanity, hate for the state, and themes of a libertarian nature. If you are easily offended, please listen to something else. For more, visit greeningoutpodcast.co.uk. Hi, I'm Katie Green.
Hi, I'm Dan Green, and welcome back to the Greening Out podcast. Now, tonight we're going to talk about Asatru, and we're joined by Daniel Updike from Northern Runes Radio, and that's at northernrunesradio.com. Daniel, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me with you today.
So, Daniel, in case anyone doesn't know what Asatru is, do you want to tell us about it and how you came to be involved with it?
Okay, well, first of all, Asatru is an Icelandic term, and it basically means true to the gods.
Right.
Not because the Asa or the Asa were another name for the Aesir, which were one of the two tribes of gods that our ancestors used to revere. And I got involved in it actually very young because I used to doodle like little kids do, about 4 or 5 years old. And I used to doodle little things here and there. And then one day it was beheld by my parents what I was doodling. And I got my arse tanned.
Oh, yes, I understand that, yes.
A different generation. And told, you shouldn't be drawing things like that. Well, of course, being a stubborn and disobedient child, I kept drawing them anyway.
Sure.
And I just didn't put them in places where people could see it. And I found out later on, when I was a teenager, I walked into a bookstore, and it was a metaphysical bookstore. I had no idea why I was in that bookstore, but I was looking around.
Yeah.
And I happened to see a book that had on the front cover of it all of my doodles.
Oh, okay.
And
Interesting.
I bought that book, and I went through it. It was written by a man named Donald Tyson. And I discovered that I had been drawing out 18 very correctly of the 29 original runes of the Anglo-Saxon Futhorc.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so that immediately spurred my interest. Now, of course, my father was a preacher for 40 years.
Oh, wow.
Like a Christian preacher?
So, yes, a Christian preacher.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so, of course, I had a lot of influence that way, and I was expected to follow in the family way.
Of course.
And but it never really resonated with me. And I came across a situation. I was very young. I spoke to my first congregation when I was 15.
Oh, really?
And I carried on with that. And, I did what was expected of me. But I was at this place. I was around 18 years old at the time, and a young girl died. She was maybe only 14 or 15 years old.
Oh.
And it was a simple little accident. Those Jeeps, I don't know if you see them, that have the rollover bars on the top.
Oh, right. Okay,
Oh, I've seen them, yes.
Yeah, it rolled into the ditch, and she broke her leg. And bone fragments from her leg went into her bloodstream and hit her lungs, and she died.
Oh, dear. Oh.
And I had to do the funeral for this young child. And, I had the whole family, and it was a big family, basically hanging on my suit jacket, and my suit jacket was wet with the tears of the family. And I just didn't know what to say to them.
Sure. Yeah.
Because, yes, there's the trite little sayings that people can do. But it wasn't real. It was something that was, and I looked at that and I resigned within a month of that, because I said, I am guilty of hypocrisy.
Yeah.
And I left that and I began to study world religions.
Right.
And I looked at not only the main religions that were out there, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, I also looked at the tribal religions that were out there. And the tribal religions really fascinated me. And I began to notice a common thread between the tribal religions. And then I thought, well, what about our people? Because they were once in tribes.
Sure.
And so I began to look at what was available in terms of the tribal religions of Northern Europe. Because, of course, I'm Anglo-Saxon and I'm descended from Northern Europe. I may be in Canada, but my ancestors, if you trace them back far enough, are the same ancestors as anybody else in Northern Europe.
Yeah.
And, I began to look at that, and I looked, and yes, there's over a 40,000-year history here.
Yeah.
And how long is Christianity involved with that? Well, depending on the region, 1,800 to 1,200 years. Comparing that to 40,000 years is like a second.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly.
And so I was looking at that, and I decided, man, I'm going to go with that which my ancestral root springs from. And things began to unfold. There weren't a lot of great books written at the time that I was doing this study. There were a few, but not very many. There was the book that I bought, of course. But it didn't really tell me all that much.
Sure.
So I had to read a lot of the source material that was available out there. The different rune poems. That was interesting. The Poetic Edda, which is an older source. The Prose Edda, which was written by Snorri Sturluson from Iceland. Looking at the different mythologies, reading different sagas, which is a fancy name for the stories of heroes and so forth, and looking at that and seeing the common thread that was there, and I began to look at stuff, and one thing stood out to me, just as an example. There's a part in the Poetic Edda called the Havamal, which means the words of the High One, and it's just advice for life. Just common sense, everyday things from, the time of our ancestors. And a lot of them are applicable today, too, if you look at the context. But one of the things that is near the end of that writing, the Havamal, is how Wodan, or Odin, won the runes. Now, what are the runes? The runes were certain characters. Letters, if you want to call them that in a mundane sense, but they were a lot more than that. And he sacrificed himself on the world tree, which was a type of the universe. Okay, sacrificed himself to himself, and hung there for 9 days and nights. And it immediately struck me that in just about every tribal religion that's out there, in shamanic initiations, there's a near-death experience.
Okay.
And, at the end of the 9 days, where he had been given neither food nor drink, he saw the runes deep in the roots of the world tree, so deep in the underworld.
Right.
And he reached out to grasp them and fell screaming from the tree. And then he mastered them. And then it talks about the 18 spell songs of Woden. And then the question came to my mind, well, why would Woden, who was the Lord of the Gods, need runes? Well, that was because they were something beyond the gods. They were actually something that was a window of the creative and destructive powers of the multiverse or universe that everything that exists sprang from, including the gods, including us. And so the runes, they have a historical history. Some people found certain symbols and thought that they had a good meaning to them, and they were very ideographic in the beginning and so forth. And then there's the mythological history, which is what I just told you about.
Yeah.
You know, and the power of that was a unifying force to the relationship between the gods and man, because these things were not just hoarded by the gods, they were given to man. And it says in the Havamal, use them till the world ends.
Yeah.
And so we look at that, and we realize there's no, like, when you take a look at the Western concept of religion, okay, and I really hate
Do I
that
have
word.
to?
I mean, like, you're thinking about like the Abrahamic religions?
Most Western religions. In the East, it's a little bit different because they have a different mindset and a different different culture and way of life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely,
But in the West, you know, there's a great dichotomy. There's what's physical and what's spiritual.
Yeah.
There's what's of this world and what's of heaven, or what's of hell, or what's, you know how I'm talking here. Our ancestors didn't have that. It was all a philosophy of life. And there was no bowing down before any deity, bowing and scraping and you know, because in the modern Western terms, you see people and they're confessing their sins, and they're, you know, hoping for forgiveness and hoping that, you know, if they live right, they'll end up being able to praise the name of this God for all of eternity, or else suffer the torments of damnation for all of eternity. Whereas the way our ancestors looked at the gods and goddesses was that they were our elder family. And in the creation myth, they did not make man. They found man and then gave gifts to man. And this is, of course, including women. To make them what they are. The gifts of imagination, the gift of intellect, the gift of good looks. And that's kind of a pun in there. But it does actually say that. And, you know, they were interested in the welfare of mankind, and they had their own things to do. But it was not a master-servant relationship. And when I looked at that, I said, you know, that really makes sense. And, you know, all these things, and I talked about the runes at the beginning, and there's other things as well that would take far too much time to go into. The gifts that we have in our lives as human beings to become something more than we were, to expand our name, to be able to pass something on to our children and descendants, we already have. Those gifts have been given to us. We're not predestinated to, you know, be this or to be that or to do this or to do that. If it's according to what skills we have in front of us, we're able to go forth. And if we're willing to sacrifice what's necessary in the effort and the desire and the perseverance to accomplish that goal, we can do it. And you know, it's something that's very pro mankind. And so I was sold on it. I'll tell you right then and there. And I've been at this for about 28 years.
Really?
So
Wow,
it's powerful. I've seen tremendous things happen, and many people come to me who have joined. They call them fellowships, hearths, or kindreds, you know, groups of people gather together to do things, have said to me, you know, none of what you're telling me is new. I've been living this way my whole life, but I just never knew what it was called.
Absolutely.
And, we use the Icelandic term of Asatru. There's other names. There's Vanatru, there's Bornseether, there's all kinds of different things. It's all basically at the core very similar. It is just the most well-known name.
Right,
and
I see.
So we'll use that as sort of like the umbrella
term.
And,
yeah.
When we're together they call them a bloat, and it's spelled BLOT. A lot of people think it's a blot, but that's something that drips out of a fountain pen. But a bloat is one of the high ceremonies of Asatru. Very simple. And it means sacrifice.
Right.
And so basically we give our gifts to the gods and goddesses, or to the whites, or to the ancestors, and then we receive in return. And of course...
But by sacrifice, obviously, just to clarify for people who might get the wrong idea.
Well, in ancient times, they used to do things very differently than we do today.
Oh, yes,
obviously.
I won't candy coat this. There were times, and you can Google this, the sacrifices in the Temple of Uppsala.
Yeah.
Okay. But all of this was a type and a shadow of something that was worth something to the people. Okay.
Yeah.
And so when we sacrifice something, we're sacrificing something that's of worth to us.
Yeah, I see.
If you're going to swear an oath, you're going to keep it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
If you're going to sacrifice something of, say, the food that you have been so bountifully provided, because you're, let's say, celebrating Freyfaxi, which is one of the bloats where we honor the god Frey, who is the god of peace and plenty. You're not going to give him something that you were going to throw in the garbage.
Yeah.
You're going to cut off something that was worth something and give it. And it's not the gift. It's from the heart. It's what meant something to you.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Then that's what's returned back to you again, because a gift for a gift principle is how everything works. And, you then receive the inspiration and the perseverance and, the strength to carry on, even though you're facing some very difficult challenges in your life, possibly. You realize that you're not alone.
Yeah. It's a nice feeling. Yeah.
And that's in the modern sense what we do. And a lot of times we use mead, which is honey wine, and I'm sure you know all about that.
Well, being in Scotland,
we use that as a medium.
Yeah.
A lot of times. Sometimes we will use, if we want to be old school, we'll use a drinking horn.
Oh, cool. All right, cool.
And other times, if somebody's got the plague or something, they'll have their own separate cup.
The liturgy.
We don't want the gift that keeps on giving.
No, not that way, no.
And it becomes very meaningful. I've had, people actually burst out, grown men, that you would think, oh boy, macho man, sitting there bawling like children.
Yeah.
Because of the energy that has touched them, because it's actually doing something that is in the language or the dialect of their deep inner soul.
And see what's interesting, Daniel, how you mentioned that, because I was thinking about this myself, because obviously Katie here, she's actually from Canada. Katie was born in Vancouver, and she moved here when she was 12, and her dad lives here, and he's from Vancouver himself. But his mother is Scottish, and for example, his father had Scottish and Irish ancestors. But since particularly Katie's dad, since he's moved here, it's like you can see the reconnection with. It's kind of bizarre to say that, but you can see because he's a massive proponent of Scottish independence, and he loves going up north to the islands and stuff. And he just absolutely loves the place, and he really feels an emotional connection to Scotland.
Yeah, he does.
And it's interesting to see someone who only moved here when he was
he was in his 40s
when he moved here. It's interesting to see, even though he's got that ancestral connection, it's interesting to see how quickly that can come back and really strike something.
Absolutely. And, There's something that a lot of people don't know too, and it's not talked about by very many people, and that is in the 40,000, and now there are some archaeologists I've looked at that say it's 44,000 plus year history of those people that were in Northern Europe. Okay. There was a culture called the funnel beat culture.
Okay.
That's a new one for me.
And that is a culture that, split off about 5,000 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now say, 5,000 years, that's a long time. Well, at 40,000 years, that's 2 seconds.
It's just a little sliver. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And those people split out and became the Celts.
Yeah.
And the Slavs and the Teutonic tribes. Yeah. And that's why you can take a look at the mythologies of the Celtic peoples. And many times you can just change the names of the gods that are being talked about. And you can see the similarities. And there's some regional differences, of course.
Of course.
But you know who they're talking about.
Yeah.
Lugh is a tremendous example because he's a dead ringer for Woden.
Yeah.
You take a look at all of these different things. There was a god in the Celtic mythologies, and forgive me that I'm not all that well versed in the Celtic mythologies, but I am very good friends with the Celtic reconstructionists.
Yeah.
There was a god that was a great god who had lost his arm in a battle with the Fomorians, which were the giants of the Celtic mythologies. And then Lugh came to the forefront.
Yeah.
We have in our mythologies the great god Tyr, or Tiwas, or in the Anglo-Saxon, they call him Tiw.
How do you spell that?
Tiw.
Tiw. Okay.
Most of the days of our week, except for Saturday, are actually named after our gods.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like
and
Wednesday
very interesting.
is Woden's Day, isn't it?
Yeah, Thursday is Thursday, and Friday is Frigg or Freya's Day.
Yeah, we were talking about that last week. Actually, it's funny.
It's powerful. Sunday is Suna's day.
Yeah,
she was the goddess of the sun. Mani's day, the god of the moon. But Tyr was a tremendous god, the bravest of the gods. And he swore an oath and placed his hand, his sword hand, his best hand, into the jaws of the Fenrir wolf when they were trying to bind the Fenrir wolf. And when the Fenrir wolf couldn't break free, as he had in the past, from this bond, this wolf of chaos and destruction, he bit off Tyr's hand.
Oh, and that's how he lost his arm, right?
And so from then on, he was always called the one-handed god. And people used to swear oaths in his name.
Right.
Well,
and very similar to the god that lost his arm in the Battle of the Fomorians of the Celtic mythology.
Fascinating. I was wondering, like, how do you see the gods? Because, I mean, we could put this in different ways. I mean, you could say, do you see them as actual entities? Or would you say that they're sort of aspects of yourself or representations of something, or maybe even all of the above?
I would say both.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll explain that because
please do. Yeah.
First of all, we take a look at, and I'm diverging here from spirituality to a little bit of science here.
Yeah, that's always good.
Okay.
It works.
And you're familiar with quantum physics and quantum science.
I am, yes.
Okay.
I know what it is, but I'm not fluent.
I'm quite familiar with it, yeah.
Okay.
They talk about everything as being an energetic waveform.
Yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
cool.
Okay. Everything. And thoughts are also energetic waveforms. They can stick things on your head and you can measure those.
Oh, yeah.
Everything is energy. Even the solid table that I'm sitting at here right now where my microphone is, it's just energy at a different rate of vibration.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's the way it is with the entire universe. And so one of the things that they talk about, and this is not Asatru, but this is in a work called, and the name of it escapes me at the moment, but it's the 7 Hermetic Laws.
Oh, right, yeah.
If you ever take a look at those.
Oh, yeah. Hermes Trismegistus.
Yes.
Yeah.
The first Hermetic law is the universe is mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that we are all thoughts within that mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if we believe and feel and act as individuals, like you wouldn't say you don't exist. You wouldn't say that you don't have feelings. You wouldn't say you don't have hopes and dreams. And, if you stub your toe on the kitchen table, it hurts.
Yeah.
And we're thoughts within that great mind. Well, the gods and goddesses are thoughts within that great mind too. Why would there be a difference?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, I take a look at that because part of my training, because there was such a small amount of material actually available, in order to get access to some of the things that gave me the ability to research things, was to become adept in 3 Hermetic orders.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am very well versed in many of the Hermetic arts, although I don't transcribe that to Asatru. But I used it as a means of being able to get access to things I would never, ever be able to see otherwise.
Yeah.
And try to correlate things, because my biggest passion was the study of comparative religions.
Oh, yeah.
And not religions in terms of Western style, as I said before, but the real spirituality behind it that informs a person's whole life. Mm-hmm. And, of course, you find that in Asatru. And, the power of that. And it also has an esoteric side, which is also very deep and takes things very deep down into the rabbit hole.
Oh, yes.
And, of course, that might be a great discussion to have on another podcast if you ever want to interview me again.
I would be very interested in that, yeah.
Yeah, if we were going deeper into it.
Oh, I would be interested in doing that sometime, sure.
Because there's a lot of things that are there. That
we're doing the 101 tonight.
Yeah,
these are just the basic level. This is just like scratching the surface of what life's really about. So it's pretty cool. I always like it. I have a really, really strong opinion of I wasn't raised with particularly strong views about anything. And that led to a significant amount of confusion in later life. So I think it's definitely important to have these things, even when you're young. I know that's kind of a controversial thing to say.
But see, I was taught about Celtic myth and stuff when I was young, and see, when I was a child, we were taken to, for example, Newgrange in Ireland.
Yes,
and we were like taken to these old Celtic sites and stuff, and we were kind of taught about it. So even though like my family were Catholic, but we were still taught about this old thing. I still have the same book on Celtic mythology that my mum bought me when we were somewhere in, it wasn't Newgrange, but it was somewhere else in Ireland.
Yeah,
so
I know you still,
always been taught about it. Well, so I suppose that could bring us into a question, Daniel. Do you think that it has great benefits to, like, say, a child to be taught about the sort of mythology,
or even just in a social aspect of connecting with other people in a way of life?
Yeah, to know about the mythology of their people.
Well, I think that it is important, as long as it's not indoctrination.
Of course,
absolutely.
We're
very against that.
I know from having been in a clergy position in a church myself. As I said earlier, there's a great deal of indoctrination that goes on there.
It is pretty horrifying,
and that's something I really like to stay away from. But when you talk about the philosophy of life and the fellowship with people, and you relate it to the mythologies and the stories, it's something that's not telling them this is the absolute truth. This is the truth that we live.
This is what we think, and you can think about it for yourself when you're of an age to make that decision, maybe. I don't know. That's the way I think. I don't have kids, though. See? So there you go.
Well, our kindred is an oath-sworn kindred. So, in other words, we hold on to the iron ring of truth and swear an oath to the gods and to one another that we are family. And it's sort of like a self-made tribe in that sense, because we don't live in tribes today. And so we try to get as much of that tribal mentality where we have that, it was called frith, and that goes beyond loyalty. That's a type of a family relationship that's there, where you stand up for those that are in your tribe. If somebody does something great and honorable, everybody benefits from it, and if somebody does something dishonorable, everybody suffers for it. But when a person, if there's a child, comes of age, and here in Alberta, Canada, that's about 18.
Yeah, here too. Yeah.
I would say somewhere between 18 and 20, they would then be asked whether or not this was what they wanted to do. And if they did, they would need to hold the ring and swear the same oath as their father and mother. If not, then they could go their way in peace. And, that way it kind of, builds that breath.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it doesn't indoctrinate people, because one of the stanzas of the Havamal says, the person who travels the wide world and learns many ways knows what is in the hearts of men and has wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is something that, we encourage, on our broadcasts. I tell people, don't take my word for anything.
Look up for yourself.
Don't sit there, look it up for yourself. And if you disagree with me, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's what all the great teachers, even the Buddha said that. If you read the Buddhist writings, he always said, don't take anything I say, as the truth. Do it for yourself, and, your experience will be your guide, basically.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I made this is several months ago, because, of course, there's so many different versions of Asatru that are out there.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, and this is one thing I will bring up.
Yeah.
There's some wingnut that'll go out there and commit some horrible act, and then they'll be on CNN or some big news network.
Yeah.
And they'll always be filmed in front of our symbols. And we sit there, and say, no, we're not like that.
I know.
But, the general public, they sit there and say,
they just eat it up. Yeah. I know.
We do not believe in committing dishonorable acts against any person, no matter who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they threaten your family, why are you going to be doing something that's untoward?
Aggressing against another person.
I think, Dan, that's important, I think, to address that part of it, because, some people that have heard of Asatru, if you mention it, they think it's something like racist or something like that, like it's as if it's some kind of white supremacy, and that's not true at all. Some people might use that name, for
to promote
their ideology,
but it's not really
not what it's about.
Would you agree that the majority of people that anyway, are?
I would say the majority of people that I know don't have a racist bone in their body.
Yeah.
They're horrified by a lot of the things that happen. We do believe, and this is the segment of Asatru that I am in, I do believe in the tribal philosophy.
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay. Yeah. I don't believe that, you should have a movie, a Beowulf, for instance, where you have,
Angelina Jolie was in that.
A great proud African standing there being Beowulf. I don't have a problem with people from any group or ethnicity or tribe on the earth at all. In fact, I have built alliances and friendships with people from many ethnic religions.
Yeah.
And, there are times where people have come up because, of course, we have the same problems here, and said things very insulting towards us. And before I was able to even say a word to defend myself, one of the leaders of the Wodenson group that happened to be having a meeting in the same pub that we were at stood up and tossed those people out into the alley.
Oh, good.
How dare you say that about these people? And, we never had a problem with it again.
Okay.
The thing is that there are some people out there that do use our symbols and do use our ways as a means to promote racial hatred.
Yeah.
And that those people are accursed.
Yeah.
and they don't fellowship with us. And not only that, we look at so many other groups. Down in the southern states, there was a group called the KKK.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what do? They burn crosses in people's front lawns.
Do they?
Apparently. Nobody thought that Christianity was a racist religion.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of a similar thing here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
I think freedom of religion is important, and people should feel free to talk about and practice and believe whatever they want to, no matter what the sort of social norm is on it. All I'll say is, if you can stand behind something, and if you're in it wholeheartedly, then good for you. I'm happy for you if you have something that you believe in,
Yeah, and I'd like to make a kind of comment as well, because just like going back to maybe some of the more esoteric sort of aspect, just while I remember it. I've been involved with like I've talked about before. I've been involved with different sort of, you could say, occult, esoteric groups, and a lot of their work. What I noticed is they use it's a lot of the time the Egyptian gods and things like that. It's pretty much always the Egyptian gods. Sometimes you get the Greek gods and things, but when I was sort of younger and interested in that, and I was watching these kind of rituals, I was sort of thinking to myself, what about the sort of Celtic gods, that's, or like even the Norse gods? Because I was thinking, like, we're sort of talking about like, Egypt and stuff, but we're not. I just felt I felt a sort of disconnection with it, just because of the sort of distance, if you understand what I mean.
Yes, I do. One of the things I studied as well and became quite good at, in not to cause people to cringe or go under the coffee table or something, when I was in the orders that I was in, is learning the greater and lesser key of the Lemegeton.
Oh, yes.
And one of the things that came to me was, because there was such sparse, there was a great deal of literature out there, but it was written in Elizabethan English, and it was very, very hard going. One book I will recommend, just as a side, that is free. Okay. And it's been written, the copyright's run out on it. It was written a long time ago.
It's called like open source. Oh yeah.
Yes. You can get it on a PDF just by a simple Google search. It's called The Culture of the Teutons. And there's 2 volumes of the 3 volumes available. The 3rd volume, I think, is no longer in existence.
Okay.
But it's not a hard read, but the man was a very academic individual, and he goes through the culture of the Northern European tribes.
All right, okay.
From pre-Christian times, and he does a very good job of it. But yes, in a lot of the Hermetic groups, they use the Egyptian gods, and they use the Greek names for the Egyptian gods, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. And a lot of Hebrew misspelling and Latin misspelling as well, I've noticed.
Oh, yes. And but the thought that came to my mind was, if it worked to summon the Lemegeton entities, what would happen if you tried that with the northern gods?
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Well, I got a reaction that almost knocked me on the floor.
Right.
When I did that. And this was very early on in my practice of this particular art. And it was joy. They didn't care how I called them. They cared that I called them. And then it was shared what a better way would be to call them. And in finding out afterwards, other people who I had not known, who were practicing shamanic things with the runes and with another practice of the esoteric called Scythe, showed me the very exact same way of calling the northern gods. And so I knew that my experience was genuine.
see, that's what's fascinating then, because see if we think about this, and we say, like, you can look at a lot of old myths and stories, like, and you can pair up mythologies all over the world. You can pair up different ideas and philosophical ideas from different, places. And you see this all over. You see the same kind of stories, like the hero stories and things like that, in all different mythologies. And then if you say, well, people are using this way, say for talk's sake, there is these entities, and you're using sort of Egyptian names or something, or then say you're using like the sort of Celtic or Norse names. Is it all the one thing? Is it just different names for the one thing that exists throughout the world? And is it just different terms, but it's like one sort of energy?
Well, that would be a very pantheistic view.
It is quite, I know, I'm just wondering. It's just something that ran through my mind there.
I would not consider myself a pantheist.
No.
I would consider myself a polytheist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I think the universe is big enough for everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And yes, indeed, the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, had gods and goddesses, which were a method through which the universe communicated with them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
That was the dialect of their inner soul. For us, it would be either the Celtic or the Slavic or the Teutonic gods and goddesses, because that's the deep language of our inner soul. It doesn't mean that they're the same gods and goddesses, but it means the energy behind them is the same.
That's what I was trying to get at. Like,
because ultimately, like, we take a look at the world tree Yggdrasil. There's 9 worlds in there. But before Yggdrasil, there was the glittering void, before anything was created, called Ginnungagap. That is the closest that we have. I sometimes call it the source.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the ultimate destination. That's where the gods want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's where the ancestors or the Alfar want to go.
Mm-hmm.
They are our guides along the way because they know that that's where we want to go.
Yeah.
And we end up coming to the choice. And now this is going really, really deep here, but
okay, go.
If you want to be, you come to the place where you have approached the source of all things. You have the choice of becoming a part of it, or becoming a reflection of it.
Right.
Okay. And this is where there's a lot of terminology that has been twisted in the modern world.
Okay.
Okay. If you take a look at the right-hand path, this is the one that most places will tell you, this is the way to go, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, of course.
That has nothing to do with positive or negative workings for or against anybody. What that really means is that you will obliterate your consciousness into the source of all things at the end of it all.
Oh, so would you say that Asatru is more left-hand path?
So left hand is you are seeking the immortality of becoming a reflection. Because if the impulse of the multiverse is to everly expand and know itself more through endless expansion, which is more the will of the universe? That you just suddenly just go back into it like a raindrop into the sea, or that you become a reflection of it, and perhaps be a multiverse of your own. And of course, this is really deep, and this will go over the heads of some people.
Yeah.
But it has nothing to do with positive or negative. What has to do with positive or negative is the heart of the person and whether or not they have hatred in their heart towards others. Okay, that's what really should be focused on, because, when a person opens themselves up to truly understand what the multiverse represents, what the gods represent beyond the mythologies, there is a compassion and a love for all of creation and for life
Wow.
Okay, that comes there. And the person that is doing that is expanding and evolving and becoming something more. The person who harbors hatred in their heart and desires to harm others, they're devolving. They're pulling themselves inwards.
I'm just trying to put this in sort of words that I can kind of understand, because sometimes I have to look at things like a 5-year-old. But is this kind of like, to me, this is sounding a lot like enlightenment, trying to reach that level, or else you'll keep coming back in Buddhism. I think, Dan, you and I have spoken about this before.
I know, but it's not what he's saying is not absorption into the whole.
Right. No, okay.
Yeah, because that is quite right-hand path, because like you're talking about Buddhism, and it's like.
But for me, I just saw some similarities, I want to confirm.
That's the absorption into the whole.
There actually is, not to interrupt, but there actually is a relationship there, not necessarily with Buddhism, but with the Vedic period.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Because you can read the stories of our gods in the Rig Veda.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I was thinking that myself, because I've read the Rig Veda, and I find it very, very similar.
Rudra, Shiva, Indra, who is the thunder god, you carry on with that. But the idea of absorption into the all, when we're talking about Eastern thought, is only about 2,000 years old.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
It used to be, like nowadays, you reincarnated. Oh, you have been cursed. You didn't learn the lessons of your life. Now you have to repeat this over and over again. And it used to be, before that time, that to be incarnated into the world was a gift.
Sure.
Yeah.
You were given the gift to be able to become something more and to ever expand. And so, you're looking at it. And of course, there's nothing wrong with either one. If that's what you choose to do, that's what you choose to do. If you're at peace with that no problem. But, when we take a look at life as a gift, okay, life is not supposed to be some drudgery. It's supposed to be something where we get to be something. And, if there's challenges in our lives that are really hard, I'll just let you know. I've said this on my own station, so I'll say it here too. I suffer from general body-wide nerve damage. I suffer pain that would put most people on the floor every single moment of every single day.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I sit here and I talk to you and I say, you know what? I get to live another day.
And that's awesome.
And that's the power of this, because you know what? Without challenges, if it wasn't one challenge, it'd be another. It's the ability to, overcome the challenges, face the challenges head on, and realize that, other people benefit from that. Our children benefit from that. And then if we get to come back, well, we get to do even more. And, it just becomes something that, is like one person illustrated. If you're dancing with somebody, it's a lot more fun than if you're dancing by yourself.
I get that.
And that's sort of like the difference between, eliminating the quote other rather than just dancing with it as a reflection.
Oh, forgive me, Daniel, but like, is it kind of similar to? It sort of makes me think of, particularly in like Zen Buddhism, they have more of the idea of the bodhisattva. So, like, for example, it's almost a term of abuse in Zen Buddhism to sort of be an enlightened Buddha. They more like they hold the sort of idea of a bodhisattva. So a bodhisattva is someone who would willfully come back to keep trying, and will keep coming back, and that way they'll keep reincarnating until everyone reaches nirvana.
And that would be what I would call the left-hand path.
Yeah.
On that note, Dan has a really good book on the bookshelf.
Have you ever read Lords of the Left-Hand Path by Stephen Flowers?
Yes, I have, actually.
And it looks interesting.
No, it's a great book. It's good.
It's good, and it dispels a lot of the myth of the Western idea of what those terms mean.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Only a fool would go around seeking to dominate other people and have power over others, because what goes around does come around. We have that concept in the North too. Our actions are called arlog,
Okay.
and that includes our thoughts, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that all falls into the well of weird. And that's spelled W-Y-R-D. And these beings called the Norns weave what comes out of the web of, or out of the well of weird into a web that is basically going to be what we experience.
The tangled web that we weave.
Absolutely.
I've heard that before. Yeah.
And even the gods are subject to the Norns.
Yeah.
And, we look at that and, do you really want to put bad Orlog into the well of weird for yourself? Do you want to do that for your kids?
I see. Yeah.
You want your name. The most common thing that people talk about with Asatru are the 9 noble virtues. And of course, that's honor, truth, courage, perseverance, hospitality, industriousness, self-reliance, and,
Yeah.
these are all things that, and I think I missed one in there, but because I'm going through the 12 noble traits in my mind.
We're going to link it all up on the show anyway, so
yeah, absolutely.
Don't worry.
But the thing of it is that, these are all noble things.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there's anybody from any religion, from any, secular group or from any group of humanity that would say these things are bad.
Oh, exactly.
And, when we focus on these things and realize that that's an outflowing of our relationship with our ancestors and with our gods who are part of that ancestry, and with the energies of the land, we become part of the natural order of things again.
Yeah.
Instead of fighting it and trying to dominate it, we become part of the whole system, and that's where we were meant to be. I think. I don't mean to be preachy or anything here, but I just look at this and say it makes sense.
I know.
And,
yeah.
It makes specific sense to those of us that, come from a Northern European descent, whether they be Celtic, Slavic, Teutonic, it doesn't matter. Because the same virtues that I'm talking about here with Asatru, I'm sure are reflected in the Celtic way. And they're reflected in the Slavic way.
Yeah.
Breaking an oath is a big deal.
And then we even find that all over the world in the really older ancient folk religions. Everywhere we find these same kind of basic tenets, I find.
I think so too. In looking at the comparative religions of the world, and especially the tribal ones.
Yeah. It's the way you express it where you are and sort of where you come from. Would you disagree with that?
Yeah. The challenges we face are different.
Yeah.
We're not looking out to go and grab our swords and spears and attack the neighboring towns.
Sure.
But we have a battlefield of the mind.
Oh, yeah.
That's the biggest war that's on these days, I would say.
That's the one. And that's the consequences of success or failure on that battlefield are so much higher.
Oh, yeah.
Than whether we get a sack of grain or not. And that's one of the reasons why the NRR Northern Runes Radio exists, is we're trying to get the word out. We're trying to network with as many people as we can, and we promote them.
Of course.
And, we try to do our best to, even if they're not Asatru, we try to promote them.
Yeah.
For the purpose of bringing awareness and awakening people's souls. There's something more than just sitting down and watching a football game.
I know. Yeah. We were actually discussing something similar earlier on in our, we were recording something earlier, actually, one of our own shows, and we were talking about that and how there is more, and, just kind of sitting around watching reality TV. I mean, I know I hate it because I sound like such a cliche whenever I say it, but there is so much more to life than that. So I know Dan wants to say something. He's clutching a.
No, Daniel, would you like to comment on what Katie said?
It's a powerful thing when you finally understand, though, that there is something more.
Yeah.
And the whole world has this pressure upon us all to become consumers.
Wow.
Work your job, buy your goods and services, be a good slave.
Oh, yes, of course.
Just carry on, keep everything running. But yet we are living beings.
Yes.
And we have a connection to nature. We have a connection to our ancestry. Mm-hmm. We have a connection to our descendants. It's no less powerful. Mm-hmm. We have a connection to the land and to wherever land we might be in. There is a connection that can be felt there and experienced there. And when you realize that, and this is one of the things as well that attracted me to Asatru more than just about anything else, was the absolute emphasis on the freedom of the human spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
That you are a self-determining being.
Yes.
And, you have to live with your choices.
Of course.
The choices that you make are yours.
Yeah. It's a big libertarian thing, self-responsibility, taking. No, really, I mean, I firmly believe in that. You have to take ownership and
of what you do.
Absolutely. And, we see in our society, at least here in Canada, there's so many that want you to point your finger. Oh, it's somebody else's fault. Oh, it's somebody else's fault.
I know. If only we could change X, Y, and Z, then everything would be fine.
Yeah.
I know.
But it's us. We have to be responsible for ourselves, and we have the power to be responsible for ourselves. We need to stop believing the lies that we are powerless little beings. We have such a spark of divinity within us that, everything trembles when a person actually connects. We're not the top of the totem pole, so to speak, but we're not at the bottom of it either.
Yeah.
And I like the words of Donald Tyson. I don't agree with everything he says, but on this particular statement that he made, he was dead on. He said, there is nothing in the universe, no angel or demon, no god or goddess, no horrible wight or giant that has the power to overthrow the soul of a human being.
That's just great.
I like that.
However, a human being can be deceived into overthrowing themselves.
Oh, yeah. The power of the human mind is amazing.
Yeah. And, also true, being something that so emphasizes responsibility, of course, and the freedom of the human spirit. That's a message that we need to have today. And I even know some atheists that don't believe in any gods, but they consider themselves Asatru.
Oh, wow.
Why? Because they're keeping alive the traditions of the ancestors, and they also believe in the freedom of the human spirit.
And the values, yeah, sure.
Absolutely. Well, Daniel. Absolutely, Daniel. And this has been just so good.
This has been really awesome. Thank you.
And there's just something. There's something I wanted to kind of share as well, because in one of the books that I first read, that was the Mythology of the Celtic People by Charles Squire. It was written in 1912, and he's talking about just this end of this chapter about how, for example, like a lot of the gods die, and a lot of the stories, and he uses it for a more important purpose. But the quote is, "Their deaths in earlier cycles of myth, however, do not preclude their appearance in later ones. Only, indeed, with the closing of the lips of the last mortal who preserved his tradition, can the life of a god be truly said to end."
Mm.
And that's kind of what I think what you're doing. That's why it won't go away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know I see the time. I don't know how long I've got here, but one little story I will share if I can.
Of course.
From the mythologies, and this is in the Prose Edda, written by Snorri Sturluson. There's what I call the Balder incident.
Okay.
Balder was a son of Odin, and he was the brightest of the gods and the best. He was just. He shone like the sun. And he had some disturbing dreams, and he went and talked to his mother about it, and she was worried about him having an impending death foretold for him. So she went throughout all the 9 worlds and secured oaths from everything that she could find that they would not harm Balder.
Okay.
However, she figured that the mistletoe was too small to really count, so she never bothered to get an oath from the mistletoe.
Okay.
And Loki discovered this. Now, the gods made sport of this because, of course, even their weapons had sworn oaths not to harm Balder. So they would throw their weapons at Balder and they just bounce off him. And, they made a game out of it. And there was a god named Holder, and he was the blind god. And he didn't get to really take part in the games because he was blind. Loki comes up to him and says, it's not fair for you. So I made this little javelin for you, and I'll point you in the right direction, and then you throw it. The javelin was made of mistletoe.
Oh, okay.
And so he throws the javelin,
that one out.
and it hits Balder and kills him dead. And, of course, all the gods are just shocked, because, of course, this is also a foretelling of that Ragnarok is now inevitable. And that, of course, is the end of the world.
Yeah.
While Balder is on the funeral pyre, Odin goes to him just before they light it and whispers all of his secrets into Balder's ear. Then, of course, Balder burns on the pyre, and he goes to Helheim like everybody else. Long story short, because, of course, some things happened to Loki as a result of further action that he did in making sure that Balder stayed in Helheim. Helheim was the only safe place in the Ragnarok. So most of the gods were killed in the Ragnarok. The world tree was burned. There was only a couple of survivors of humanity that hid in the trunk of the world tree, and then the new cycle started. When the new cycle started, Balder and Holder, who had made up, and they were friends again, because, of course, he didn't do it on purpose. They get released from Helheim, and Balder then takes his father's seat as Lord of the Gods. Looking at things, one person put it this way: Balder is Odin. When you take a look at the reincarnation, the new cycle, now we have something that is a true type and shadow of things that happen in our lives and in the universe in a secular fashion.
Instead of the Christian idea of linear time.
Yes, and Odin was he was the first god to die in the Ragnarok. But yet he went forth and he knew that, but he'd already won. You see. And so we look at things from a bit of a different perspective than say other religions that are out there, because of that secular nature. Because it grows again, and we find at the very end of that story, the gods that survived are sitting at the golden tables like they were right at the beginning of this cycle.
Yeah.
And it all starts again. And I just thought that was an important thing to share, because
absolutely.
there's a lot more not only just to our souls and to our way of life and the way we look at things. There's a lot more to the universe itself than what we think there is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, that was really interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Is there anything you want to let us know about Northern Runes Radio?
Yeah, where people can hear you, Dan?
Absolutely. You can find us at northernrunesradio.com. You could also find us on our podcast server site, and that's sort of more like a blog with a player at the end of it.
Awesome.
And that's just simply nrr.podbean.com.
I will link up at the bottom of the show notes. Absolutely.
You can subscribe through RSS or iTunes through either one of those places. We're on Facebook. You can just type in Northern Runes Radio on the search feature of Facebook, and our page will come up. We're just about everywhere. And we're also interested in talking with people. We're interested in promoting other podcasts and other places. We are a network station. We believe in supporting and pushing people up, even if it's not Asatru.
Yeah.
We like to push people up.
Yeah.
Who are doing something that will help awaken the souls of people.
Well, that's what that's absolutely what we're about as well. And thank you so much for coming on, because it's interesting, to look at things from a different perspective sometimes, because you do kind of get the same things kind of shoved down your throat all the time. And sometimes it's nice to actually step outside of that and look at things that other people are doing that is completely out of your comfort zone, but it's interesting and it's logical and it's stood the test of time, basically. And it's very nice. Yeah. So anyway, for more libertarian podcast ratings and news, people can go to greeningoutpodcast.co.uk.
Yes, and Daniel Updike, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
No problem. And just to let you know, I don't usually talk politics on our station, but I do on my personal page. I do belong to the Libertarian Party of Canada.
Oh, wow.
So just so that you know, so your brothers and sisters across the pond when it comes to that.
Do you want me to leave that in, or do you want me to edit that out?
No, you can leave that on.
Awesome.
And I will.